here. It's a little windy, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to probably use a 3/8 drill to go ahead and drill 2 holes here on the bottom of the bucket so I can add 2 of these buttons. And I'm going to go ahead and drill 2 more on top. I was originally going to do 3. I'll do 2 on the bottom, 2 on top. Probably it's something between 3/8 and 1/2 for these buttons, but they'll fit great. And we'll see how that goes. Guys, welcome back. It's been a while. Honestly, I was away for a week and I've been dying to get back so I can go ahead and start to modify the hardware for this Courtercade. So honestly, I'm gonna do a software video. There's dozens out there. What I find fun is hardware mods. I'm in no way am I an expert. Do I know how to use a drill? Sure. Am I doing this the easiest way possible? Probably not. And if you guys have an easier way or have a video, link them in the comments, let me know. I'd love to see how different people tackle these pretty much unofficial mods. So what I did, as you can tell, the first thing is I removed the controller deck bucket. I kind of have this hot mess just sitting, laying on here. I removed the plastic part. Reason why I did that was the first couple of mods I made were drilling holes to put buttons. Let's go ahead and start with that. So I will go ahead and probably show some quick videos of me drilling these outside. If you guys own a drill, if you drill things on the simple drilling work, this part's super easy. Anyone can do this, honestly. You don't need an expensive drill. You can totally get yourself a drill at Walmart or, Harbor Freight and pull this off. So the buttons that I've been showing off for a while are these 1/4 1/2-inch buttons here. And I went ahead and got myself a 1/2-inch bit, drilling bit, which I'll link this stuff, honestly. It's probably, this is a Cobalt set that's way overkill for something like this. I don't recommend someone paying like $80 or $100 for a drill bit set for thin plastic like this. You get yourself like a $1 drill or a couple dollar drills. I'll see if I can find some bits on Amazon in the correct size and I'll recommend them. So this is a 1/2-inch drill bit. I took the controller deck bucket and I went ahead and I made 2 drill holes here because I decided that underneath the button, I kind of want these to be kind of like my coin buttons that you would have underneath. So the idea was to possibly use the red buttons to go in here, given that it's supposed to be like a coin button, but I kind of didn't like that. I decided I'm either going to get something blue to match because the blue runs along the bottom, or what I am going to do for now is I'm going to use these black buttons. So they're really hidden in there. It's kind of like a little incognito button that doesn't really call a lot of attention, which is what I like. I like mods that kind of look like they belong or they don't really grab your attention right away for things like this. Now, there are mods where you want to do LED strips. You want to go crazy. That's different. You want to grab attention. This is not that. So you pretty much put the button in there. You'll have your 2 pins here that you'll go ahead and you'll connect to your USB encoder the same way you connected all the other buttons. Let me just go ahead and just loosely screw that in there for now. And there you go. You'd have these 2 buttons here now, which can act as anything. You pretty much program and set what it's going to be in your RetroPie, in your Batocera, or whatever user interface you'll be using. So that's there. Next, I wanted 2 other buttons up on top. So above here, we got to bring this up. Above here, you have this plate, which I also removed, and I did the same thing. Now, excuse the really crummy drilling. I was being a bit too gun-ho. I was kind of holding this at an angle while drilling it. If you've seen the video, not the proper way to drill this. You want to clamp this down. You want to come exactly down, 90 degrees straight down, so you don't have any of this. But again, I'm probably either going to do a vinyl wrap on this, or I'm just going to paint that black. This is the back part of the arcade. You don't see it as much. In this section, I'm going to go ahead and add the white buttons. So above here, you'll have 2 buttons to click, and on the bottom, you'll have 2 buttons to click, 1 for each player. And I think it's a pretty cool combo between the white and the black, and they can be whatever I want. That is more than enough. You need at least 2 more buttons to run this setup that we are doing with these RetroPie setups. And again, I hear a lot of people mentioning that RetroPies are super expensive right now. There are all these third parties taking advantage of the chip shortage. There are bundles that are ridiculous. And if you can't get a Pi for the price that you go for, give or take maybe $5, you know, there are a bunch of options. I've seen people put little Android TV boxes, you know, small little 4-inch boxes. I think ETA Prime made a video about that. Small 4-inch boxes in here and run Android TV on here and then run basic emulators. I mean, that's a great way around if you have a USB stick or you have an SD card. I've never done that. I might do a video on trying to pull something off like that because there are a bunch of other options like mini PCs and stuff, but I don't know if that'll comfortably fit in here. There's the Nuke boards and other, I say Nuke, but they're the NUC boards, Intel's single board setup, kind of like the Raspberry Pi, and a bunch of other single board things. Like there was the Atomic Pi that was out there 2 years ago. It's pretty good, and a bunch of other options. But do not put a $300 item in here to run your games. You don't need that. It really, you can go on eBay and buy a mini computer, like those little mini Lenovo's or Dells that are literally like 6 inches by 6 inches, and that would be extremely overkill for something like this. But if it's in there, you can do that. If not, try OfferUp, try Craigslist. There's a lot of people out there selling their Pis, or maybe even a Pi 3 or 3B, which is still awesome. And, you know, they're probably selling it for a proper price, or if not, you can haggle. So that's my recommendation. I luckily had 2 Pi4s I wasn't using. One's going into this project, one's going to another project. And back to the hardware modding. So again, once I added these, the next tricky thing for me was I just did not want to give up this USB port on the right side. I wanted that to be data. I didn't want it to just be power, which would have been easy. I wanted it to be data. I wanted to be able to plug a third controller in here or another type of controller. Like I have a Nintendo 64 clone controller. Sometimes I like to stick in there when I'm playing 64 games. So, you know, I kept trying to figure out what am I going to do to get this to work. Now, it's kind of a Frankenstein job, and if anybody just enjoys trying to figure these things out by hacking and slashing, hey, this is probably for you. So, first things first is I'm going to introduce one of the biggest things for modding hardware like this I like to use, PVC sheets. So this is literally a board of PVC plastic, the same thing pipes are made out of. This here is a 1/4 inch. It's a pretty thick board. They usually come an 1/8 of an inch, which is what I recommend really. There are popular brands that you can find at Home Depot and Lowe's, like I think it's Pilite, I think it's pronounced, P-A and the word light. I'll link them down there, and I'll also link them on Amazon. And then there's this version, which is thicker, more rigid. This is what I had at the moment. I have dozens of these boards, so I pretty much started cutting out pieces of this. If they're an 1/8 of an inch, you can usually use scissors. Since this is a 1/4 inch, I had to actually cut it with a tool. Super simple. I could use scissors. I did at first, but it started to snap because this is plastic. It's a little flimsy, but it gets the job done. So what did I do? I went ahead and I took out the original USB component that was in the arcade 1-up, which is right here. Let me go ahead and focus on this and zoom in for a second. And I looked at the 4 holes that we had here. We have 2 holes on each side that are 1/16 of an inch. And the way I know that is my 1/16 bit is what did the job. So this is the smallest bit in my collection. It's the smallest bit you'll usually find in most of these collections. You can find smaller bits. Just make sure they fit your drill or if you have an adapter. So again, 1/16 holes on each side, and they had screws that would go into here that would connect to plastic posts, and that's what would hold this in place. Now you also have these smaller holes in the back. These are probably 1/32 or 1/32. That's 1/32, yeah. 1/32 of an inch to 1/32 of an inch. I don't know why this is bothering me. It is. I didn't have a bit that small. So I went ahead and I also got a 1/16. I drilled into that. I made them a little bit bigger. This is still usable if I wanted to go back to this. And what I did is with my cutoff piece of PVC sheet, I went ahead and at first I wanted to align them, and I'm like, well, I need to mark these holes, and I didn't have anything small enough that can mark black that would go in there, like my silver Sharpie. So I just got a thin paintbrush with some white paint, and I just did 4 blobs. I did that, they didn't come out perfect. So what I did with my final one that you'll see that's already mounted in here, here's my final piece. What I did was I went ahead and I'll just go ahead and recreate this here. I went ahead and I taped the board to my plastic board underneath. I taped it flush with the side that's flush. It has to pretty much align flush on this top part where the USB port is at. And I went ahead and I got my drill, and very carefully I started drilling through the board, very slowly through the board into each hole. 1, 2. When I was done with those 2, I literally put toothpicks in there to hold it in place, and then 3, 4. Once I did that, and I carefully made sure to pull this out without damaging it. Luckily, I didn't. Again, my way of doing this, it's not the easiest way. I don't recommend it if you really want to make sure you're going to use this again. It's what I did, because I was dying to put my USB in there. And I got the 2 original screws, and I screwed them back in. And then there's 2 little posts that stick out that fit into these holes. Now, the other thing I did was I went ahead and I sanded the edges with regular sandpaper, make sure there's no pieces sticking out. And I had this very flush type of a mount there, very flush area where I can go ahead now and bring my USB into it. Now, I mentioned this before that this is the USB that I bought for this. Let me zoom out here. So I went ahead because this was a 3.0 data USB, very thick, very heavy duty. I know this can take the modding abuse that I put it through. So I carefully cut off the edge here. Immediately want to expose the tip of the USB, just like this original housing had, because the original USB has these little bevels, these little parts that stick onto the side, and there's a little rail in there that this actually slides into that kind of holds it in place. The problem is, how do you keep it from going back once you're putting an actual USB port into there? You kind of need something to hold that put. So I decided I was going to stick this on the rail and then glue my USB to that little plastic PVC plate I made there. Let me go ahead and zoom in there real quick. So that's kind of how I did that. I still have my USB port fully exposed there. Well, it's not perfect alignment, but it'd be like that. USB port fully exposed. The only problem was when I put on the plates, all of this rubber on the bottom was causing to pop up. So I needed to get in there with a utility knife and I needed to shave off that part of the bottom. I very carefully started back here, dug my utility knife in there and kind of carved out. Very carefully, trying to not get any of the wiring that connects to the very end of the metal housing. But I did quite a lot of work here, if you can see. I mean, this was before and this is after. So if you're comfortable with that, this method, you know, it may be fun, will work for you. But now that it fits completely flat, I could put it on my plate, put in those railings. I'm gonna go ahead and super glue this to the plate. I'm gonna go ahead and hot glue along the edge, and then I should have this working perfectly fine. To make sure that while carving this away that I didn't ruin anything, I still plugged it into my computer. I plugged a USB stick into this and I made sure I still had data. It's working perfectly fine. The other thing I did, which is even more overkill, and this is where the problem is going to kick in, is I kind of have this cabling in here just floating around. And I wanted to be able to provide even more support for this. Even though the gluing is more than enough, I want this to be like kid-friendly. I want a 5-year-old to come in here and jab a USB plug and rip it out with nothing happening. I went ahead and I also cut another piece of plastic. Cut another piece of plastic like so. I'm going to zoom out. Yeah, zoom in good. I got a 1/4 inch drill bit, drilled right into the middle, because that is the thickness of this cord. The regular corded part is a 1/4 inch, and I sliced it in half. I'm going to go ahead and glue this part to the bottom of the board. I'm going to go ahead, Put the cord in there, and I'm gonna glue this other half shut. This is absolute overkill, but now my USB that's there, when pushed back, cannot move back because the thicker part at the end of the cord will not let it pass the 1/4-inch hole. Again, you know, this is beyond just modding a USB thing. This is, in a sense, just trying to make a new system to house my USB cords. And this was just a kind of a proof of concept that this works. I can use this for other home projects that I need to cable manage around. And I have to carefully choose where I'm going to put my cords in here because I do have all of these arcade buttons that are here. Now, my rightmost corner button over here is going to hit this new setup that I have. These little pins are going to hit it. So I now am going to rotate this button and have those cords go in that direction. This is the only problematic area because it all lives in this area here. So I'm going to go ahead, put everything together now. I'm going to power this thing up. All of the hardware modding should be done, and then I can really focus on that software. There is one other minor mod that I did. And okay, the last thing I did was I got a Hauser drill bit that's kind of like the one that looks like a cup, 2-inch. I made a hole in here. It wasn't big enough. I kind of had to expand it to the size, but it ended up being an oval. I was in a hurry. I just really wanted to put this 2-inch rubber grommet in here because I have this AC adapter living in there that holds 2 plugs. It also has USB power, and I wanted the actual plug to be able to just come out through here without any issues. So I had to go big. Totally unnecessary. There's easier ways to do this, but this is the route I went, and because of that, here, let me put this through. I have to put this back in because I'm able to put this through, and that'll be the back of the arcade. These little grommet things are pretty cool. I had a collection of them. They come in all various sizes, 1-inch, 2-inch. Go this route if you want. I just went 2 inches, so I could just stick the actual plug outlet right through there. I mean the tip of the plug outlet. The tip of the plug extension, sorry. And I'm going to put all this together, and then I'll come back, and we'll see how it goes. the time lapse of the build for a second. I went ahead and I put this panel back. I had to loosen the screws on the side. I also couldn't forget that I had to re-loosen the controller deck to lift back up in order to pull this far enough to get this panel back in. This is probably what you're going to want to do first before you put the controller deck back together, if you remove this to drill a hole in. The other thing I wanted to mention is I went ahead and I plugged in the wires that come with my button kit to these smaller buttons here. And they're not long enough to reach the controller deck, which is probably like a good 7-8 inches further down. So I extended it using these jumper cables, which I've shown before. I'll link them again. You'll see jumper cables, spare cables, and I pretty much peeled 2 females to 2 males together. I went ahead and I peeled 2 and 2, so 4 of those, 1 for each button, to pretty much extend this cable all the way down into the USB encoder. So let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit there. So you can see I have the jumper cable extending from up here all the way down into the USB encoder. They just pop right in. So cable management's definitely gonna be fun in this little thing, but for now everything is just gonna sit in here loosely. I am connecting the 2 USB encoders to the Pi. I have my wireless keyboard dongle connected to the Pi. That's for this thing, which you will need for certain setups. Any wireless keyboard will do, or even USB cabled keyboard. And this is the USB ports that I've attached along the side. I'm going to go ahead and connect it to the bottom. So I have all 4 USBs being used. I'm going to have to tuck these cables in, move this out of the way, and get this, where is it? This power adapter to fit in there. Now the power adapter itself, it has some weight to it, but it's not that heavy. I really do think I can double stick tape that to the inside of the panel in here, you know, something like that, so it can live up here. If I ever need to power any USB ports, I have more USB ports of power. 2 amps there. I'm going to leave that all there temporarily. Let's see how it ends up. Let's turn this thing around and turn it on. Okay, first time booting it up since I've added the 4 buttons. Alright, buttons lining up, that's good. Now we'll get into Batocera and make sure that these 4 buttons actually register. We'll start with 2 buttons at the bottom, then we'll go to ones on top. Alright, so these buttons were already mapped. This was from the USB encoder kit that I did in that last video. The more complicated lit up ones, but they allow me to stick with buttons I already have. Let me go ahead and go to settings. Controller settings. Configure a controller. Let's zoom in here. Okay. Up, down, left, right. Alright, so I'm going to start with this button here, the player 1 button. But for select, I'm going to choose my new button down here. Let's see if that registers. It does. It's button 8, great. And then for the actual controllers themselves, I'm going to go with the Super Nintendo setup. The X, Y. I'm going to skip all the analogs. L1, L2, I'm sorry, L1, R1. I'm skipping L2, skipping R2, skipping L3, skipping R3. For the hotkey, I'm going to try my new button up on top. Let's see if that works. Let me go ahead, get it up here. Let's see. And that worked too. So I'm now going to configure the second controller. I'll do the same. Alright, we have X-Men Street Fighter pulled up. I'm going to go lower the volume on that. Let me go ahead and use select. Select is working as coins. So pretty much the buttons I set to the bottom here are player 1 coin, player 2 coin, start, start. Yep. Okay, the coins are working. If I wanted to exit out of the game, I could press the hotkey start button. Okay, so that worked. The top buttons are working. And the 4 additional buttons are working. I now need to clean this up, do some cable management in there, set it all up. I may add LEDs to the bottom of this since this is supposed to be kind of a showy piece, hence the light up buttons. But I have everything I need and I think it came out pretty good. Alright guys, well thanks for watching. That's pretty much the hardware modification for this setup. Short of maybe adding some LEDs, it'll be powered by USB. Next I'll go into some software. I know I mentioned that before, but I really wanted to get these mods out of the way. Before I got into RetroPie and all that, I wanted to make sure I had my 4 additional buttons, because you do need at least 2. In the software, I'll show that the USB port that I added on the side is working. I went ahead and I tested it. I have power from it, so I can power or charge my phone, power an LED strip, or actually stick a USB thumb drive in there and pull from that so I can add ROMs, or the best option, plug in a USB controller for a third controller, third player, or to use a USB controller instead of these. For certain games it'll work better. That's mostly what I want to do. I really want to keep the functionality of that. But I'll be making the other video as soon as I can. If you have any questions about the setup, I know a lot of this modding was really just cutting and slicing, gluing things, but you'd be amazed. I mean, with some PVC plastic and super glue, you can do some pretty amazing things. So if you have any questions, let me know, guys. Again, like and subscribe if you can. Share the videos, get other people to like and subscribe, whatever we can to help grow this. Also, I'll be adding links. I've been having issues with them. I've seen some people have used them. Amazon just keeps resetting my account, but no worries. I'll just keep trying. If you can use the links, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.